The Marines laughed at her scar until the commander recognized it. The barracks were alive with chatter, laughter, and the clanging of metal, but all of it froze in a heartbeat when Sergeant Mara Steele stepped into the mess hall. She moved with a soldier's precision, every step deliberate, every motion controlled, but it was her scar that drew the most attention. It wasn't just any scar. It stretched diagonally across her cheek from the temple to the jawline, jagged and pale against her otherwise flawless skin. To anyone else, it was a mark of pain, a sign of vulnerability, but Mara wore it like a badge of honor. The younger Marines snickered as she passed. "Looks like someone got into a real fight," one whispered, loud enough for others to hear. "Or she tried cooking and lost an argument with the stove," another joked, smirking. Mara didn't react. Her gray eyes scanned the room, noting who had laughed, who had whispered, who had tried to hide behind a napkin to avoid her gaze. She didn't need to respond. Actions spoke louder than words, and the story behind this scar was something no one in that room would soon forget. Her superior officer, Captain Daniels, chuckled and shook his head. "Give the girl a break, she's new." The laughter continued, but a few heads began to glance uneasily toward the entrance. That's when the commander walked in. Colonel James Harrington, a man whose reputation alone could silence an entire room, stepped through the doorway. His eyes were sharp, calculating, and they landed on Mara almost immediately. There was a pause, a silence that blanketed the chatter and laughter. His gaze didn't move, didn't blink. Mara's scar was pale under the fluorescent lights, but to him it was unmistakable. The Marines froze mid-laugh. Something in their commanding officer's stare made the room hold its breath. "Mara Steele," he said, voice low but commanding. "Step forward." She did, slowly, deliberately, every movement controlled, every step echoing off the walls. The whispers died entirely. "Do you know what this scar represents?" the commander asked, pointing subtly. Mara's lips pressed into a thin line. She nodded slightly, and the weight of unspoken stories filled the space between them. "This," he said, gesturing toward her cheek, "is not a mark of failure. It is proof of courage, proof of survival under fire, proof that you've faced what most would run from." The Marines' laughter had vanished entirely. Their eyes widened, some with awe, some with shame. "You were in Operation Silent Thunder," Harrington continued, his voice echoing slightly in the silent mess hall. "The firefight at Koresh Valley. You saved 3 fellow Marines while sustaining this wound, and yet you're mocked by it by those too blind to understand what it takes to survive." Mara stood straight, shoulders squared, but inside, the familiar weight of memory pressed against her chest. Every detail of that operation, the deafening roar of gunfire, the heat of explosions, the cries of wounded soldiers came rushing back. She had lived through hell, and yet she had survived. The commander's eyes swept the room. "Do you understand why respect isn't optional here? It's earned in moments like these. Every scar, every wound, every sacrifice carries a story that demands acknowledgement, not mockery." A young Marine who had been snickering earlier stammered, "Sir, I mean—" The colonel didn't wait for an apology. His gaze alone silenced the man. Mara didn't need to respond either. The lesson was clear. Harrington stepped closer, so close that Mara could feel the authority radiating from him. "You wear that scar with honor," he said, voice softer but no less commanding, "because it is a symbol of everything you've survived, everything you've done for this unit, and everything you will continue to do." Mara allowed herself a small nod. The room remained silent, every eye on her and the scar that had just transformed from a mark of ridicule to a symbol of honor. The laughter and whispers of the Marines had evaporated completely. What replaced them was respect, quiet, unspoken, but undeniable. Later that day, Mara walked through the barracks with a subtle confidence. She had always known the true meaning of her scar, but now the unit understood too. The commander's words echoed in her mind. Every scar is a story. Every story deserves respect. She touched the scar gently, almost reflexively, and smiled faintly. It was no longer just a mark of survival. It was a testament to resilience, courage, and the unspoken battles she had fought and won. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that from now on, no laugh, no mockery, no misunderstanding could diminish the weight of her service. The story spread quietly through the ranks. Respect replaced ridicule. Younger Marines looked at her differently. Her scar was no longer a mark to mock. It was a symbol of the fire she had walked through, the courage she had displayed, and the heroism that often went unseen. By the end of the day, Mara's scar had a new meaning. It was no longer just her story. It was a story that inspired, that commanded respect, and that reminded everyone who witnessed it that true courage could never be mocked.